From the day the shed was delivered, we've been slowly improving it every time we visit. Insulation to get materials, it's all built up to this. I finally get to show you how our cabin turned out with the free shipping containers, but everything didn't go quite as planned. If you wing it like I do, just be prepared to fix and troubleshoot things on the fly. Let me show you the trouble I ran into and a very special guest that popped in. Let's get into it. Pulling into the property and opening the gate is a very special feeling. I would like to say it's equal to the feeling of opening a brand new book. As I enter the property, I know a brand new adventure awaits me every time. There are always projects I can work on, but it's always projects I love working on. What we're doing today was at the top of the priority list to complete, and everything we've done until now has essentially been leading to this point. The days were still fairly short and there was plenty of work to get done, so we jumped right into it. Boards were all prepped by my dad. I could just grab them and start attaching them to the wall. My buddy Tom let me use his cordless tools, which is super helpful. I did end up getting a 1,000-watt generator on Marketplace, but I'm not sure it was strong enough to run power tools and lights, but it charged the batteries just fine.
Wow.
Is it just me, or do you also spend a good portion of your time looking for tools every time you work on something? Comment below if you're like me, or if you have some good tips to avoid misplacing your tools on the job. In the previous video I attached some boards already, but I took those down as I wanted to stagger the seams on the rest of the cabin. Let me retouch on the generator for a minute. I paid $35 for the generator, and the person that sold it to me thought it was a carburetor that needed cleaning. My dad and I replaced the spark plugs, emptied the old gas and put new gas in, and fired it up with some starter fluid. After running for a bit, the generator works just fine, so I'm fairly certain it was just old gas that made it act up, but I was ready to spend more effort on fixing it. I'm not sure it's common knowledge to a lot of people, but gas actually does expire. I'm curious how many people know this, so comment below how long you think gasoline lasts before it's considered expired. We'll revisit that in just a few. Let's get back to why we're here though. Even though this project was going to be easy, it did require some thought and planning. The shipping container planks we used were all sized a bit different, and the mistake I made here was not to cut them all to equal width. It would have made this job so much easier. Each row I did, I had to use the same width planks, and I tried my best to keep the cuts the length of the board to a bare minimum, since I didn't have a table saw on hand. Right here was a great example of me being lucky. This was another thing I could have thought of before starting the walls. I could have calculated which boards would line up perfectly to avoid the long cuts. Always better be lucky than good, however, as in this instance it ended up working out for me. Ended up attaching all the boards with screws, figuring it would be easier to remove them when we do electrical, and it will be much sturdier for shelves. These boards did end up with some imperfections, and I left most of the imperfections alone. This crack here was near the bedstow, and I didn't want one of the kids to get hurt or pull pieces off of the wall as they sit in bed and get bored before bedtime. I just used 2 screws to hold the edge of the broken piece down, but ideally I could have glued it back together before hanging the board. This was the on-the-spot fix to keep everyone safer.
That's about how high you went over there. Yeah, look at it.
I basically had 3 different widths of boards for the most part. As I got near the top of the cabin, I wanted to make sure that I minimized my cuts like I said earlier. This was as extensive as my planning was on this project. I took different widths of boards and saw what would fit best to finish up this wall.
So what would it be, like 3 of these? That's too high.
As I finished up this wall, the generator was running the light and charging a battery, but it didn't seem it could handle more. You can see the light pulsing as the generator ran inconsistently. I ran a whole tank of new gas and oil mixture that night. The generator did seem like it ran better after that, but it wasn't perfect. Likely a lot of the older residue got burned off from the old gas that was in there. I mentioned earlier the gas expires, and it turns out it can expire in as little as 4 weeks, but most gasoline will be stable for 3 to 6 months in the right conditions, and if you add fuel conditioner, it can last up to a year. With the biggest wall of the cabin done, the cabin looks so much better already. We can also move most of the clutter out of the way at this point, and the rest of the cabin will be much easier to work on. It's time to call it a night and get back to it in the morning with my new friend that visited. We started the morning by working on the wall with the chimney. Most of the wall is covered with the cement board, so it would go pretty quickly. I don't know that we even needed the cement board since the chimney pipe is double wall, but it makes us feel a bit safer, so it's worth it. I think we'll likely end up putting up shelves there at some point. Went outside to make some cuts around the chimney, and look who stopped by. A lot of people fear bees because they think they will get stung. As you can see here, this little fella just wanted to hang out and grab a rest. He flew around a bit and measured out a board for me. Jokes aside, bees don't want to sting you as it's a death sentence for them, so they will only really do it as a last line of defense. It was such a cool little moment on this property to have this bee hang out with us. Back inside, I tried my best to line up the sideboards with the top of the cement board with minimal cuts. I knew the pieces going above the cement board would need to be full pieces. I ended up cutting one piece here the length of the board to be able to finish up this wall. There was a lot of room for air around the chimney flange, which made that part easy since I didn't have anything but my hands to scribe with. The last wall is fairly simple. Again, I didn't measure the boards from the bottom to the window, but somehow the layout worked out perfectly. I got everything measured out, cut, and attached. Oh, PM!
Yeah.
Crikey. One thing I did end up doing different here is I pre-drilled the holes near the window. I was attaching the boards very close to the edge of the board and I didn't want the pieces to split.
Even Sunday.
All the work in the walls ended up looking like this. Do you think all the effort put into the containers was worth it? Let me know by leaving a comment below. I have so many projects to work on, some that are quick and some that will take years. I'm so excited to get them done and share them with you. With all that wrapped up, it was time to close the chapter on this book.